He has been lead minister in 3 congregations and has served as spiritual care and bereavement counselor in a number of clinical settings. Reverend Catherine loved, I usually call her Cat. She's a call you anything. Cat loves music and the arts, and sings in the Reno Philharmonic Chorus. Today, her talk is about reclaiming theological language, or whatever happens. Come on up. Thanks. Would you like this in here or by in here?
Well, first of all, I want to say my eyes are not dry. I'm so moved by that song and the prayers, and incredibly grateful to be here with all of you today. I don't know why I'm feeling so moved, but that was just beautiful. And I hope that I can give you as much of a blessing as you've already given me. So I have words, but the words are just words. That's funny. So I want to share some thoughts. Thank you, Lovey. I didn't sleep too well last night. I woke up about every hour. I don't know what was up, but I was up. So anyway, here I am, and I'm so glad to be here. And so I want to share with you thoughts on reclaiming theological language. And by this, by theological, I mean the study of the nature of the divine source or God, and our beliefs related to this study of the divine source or God. So that's kind of a theological. It's often used in Christian terminology, but it's so much broader than that. And I find that there can be usefulness and joy in finding language to give voice to some of the experiences we have. It can help to develop more awareness of our spiritual aspect of our being if we can find language for it, and hopefully build a consciousness of spirit if we're able to name it. And of course, the paradox, which I will repeat over and over again, is some of this is so beyond that we can't give it language, but then we try. So that's the paradox of this whole talk. That's it. So anyway, my focus this morning is upon language we're familiar with in the Judeo-Christian tradition, but of course we could use language from any tradition to help name our relationship and experience with God. There's so many wonderful kinds of words out there in the world and historically to draw from. So my hope with this exploration is that it will be encouragement to give voice to the language of the soul, and the attempt to share some of our most important and perhaps unifying experiences with one another. And towards the end of the presentation, I'm going to invite you to just speak aloud in the room some of your favorite theological terms. Just let that sort of rattle around as we're proceeding here, so we can hear just a little more of that which we hold dear in this room. The quote for today is from Lal Ded, the quote that was in your newsletter. She's also known as Lalaswari, Lala, or Lal Didi. She was a Kashmir mystic who lived around 1320 to 1392. She became a disciple in the Shiva worship tradition that aimed to experience the oneness of God and the phenomenal world. And she also influenced the Islamic mystical tradition of the Sufis. Her words show both the unmistakable clarity and the joy of her experience of the union with God and the material world. And she attempts to give words to experience and yet and then again returns to the experience itself beyond words. So the words, again, they point to mystical experience. And at best, through the words, we can sense the essence of the spiritual experience and perhaps even receive a transmission. So this is the quote, the short part that was in your newsletter. To learn the scriptures is easy, to live them hard. The search for the real is no simple matter. So now I'll share the whole thing with you, repeating again. To learn the scriptures is easy, to live them hard. The search for the real is no simple matter. Deep in my looking, the last words vanished, joyous and silent, the waking that met me there. The soul, like the moon, is new and always new again. And I have seen the ocean continuously creating. Since I scoured my mind and my body, I too, Lala, am new, each moment new. My teacher told me one thing: live in the soul. When that was so, I began to go naked and dance. Now, I'm not advocating that you go naked and dance, unless you'd like to. But I am inviting you and me too to live from the soul and move from this place and this source as a dance, in the dance of life. So we attempt to give profound experiences language, but in some of our deeper spaces and states, words disappear. We are joyous and silent in the waking that meets us there. Yet it's a worthy and important exercise to try to formulate language for this and to share it with others so we can open the door for others' experiences too, and open the door for this kind of dialogue among us. I remind us of this now because at this particular moment in time, we are bombarded by outside influences that distract us at most every turn, draw us out of the great background of our being, and from the knowing that we can count on inside and beyond when we are in relationship, when we walk with God. So this week I got so much information. I felt like it was all just jamming the wires, and I had to stop. I had to just stop. I'm like, yeah, I'm interested in that, and I'm interested in that, and I want to know more about that, and I want to keep up with what's going on, and in the world, and blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, wow. And the other thing that's really tricky right now that some people, when I was preparing, is that we don't have a consensus reality anymore. There's so many different viewpoints and different ways to find sources of information and what we might call truth. I mean, it's just fragmented and multi-layered, and pick your reality, right? It's kind of like that, or pick your cohorts. This is my tribe. So anyway, so we forget sometimes to ground deeply within, and it's really easy to be distracted from that. Really easy. So my urge to us all is to repeatedly return to the source and repeatedly and reliably be resourced. As the ocean continuously creating new and always new again, fresh as a newborn child, naked and dancing, as we are inspired and moved by Spirit. There's an Episcopal priest who I'm going to cite a couple of times, and his name is Father John Sanford. He's deceased now, but his mother was Agnes Sanford. She was a great healer. She was an interesting healer in the Christian tradition. And he went on to become to study Jungian therapy after being a minister in a church for a while, and studied depth psychology. So I'm going to draw from some of his stuff, and this is a story from one of his books. He tells about a well at a farmhouse in New Hampshire where his family spent their summers. For many years, the house did not have modern plumbing or electricity. All the water came from the well outside the front door. The water was unusually clear and cool, and the well never ran dry, even during the hottest summers, when other families had to haul water from a nearby lake. After a time, the family fortunes improved and the house was modernized. Kerosene lamps and wood stoves were discarded, and electric lights and an electric stove were installed, along with indoor plumbing. Water was received from a central community water system, and the old well by the front door was boarded over. Many years later, on a warm summer day, John Sanford decided he would like to drink from that old well. He removed the cover in anticipation of a cool drink he remembered from his boyhood. However, when he let down the bucket, he had a surprise. The well was bone dry. Why had the well, which had once provided such an abundance of water, gone dry? In his curiosity, Sanford inquired of his neighbors. He learned that a well like the one by the front door is fed by hundreds of tiny underground rivulets. After water is drawn out, the well is refilled by these tiny streams. When water is no longer being drawn out, those tiny streams close up because water no longer runs through them. The well had failed not through lack of water, but through lack of use. Once the little streams were dry, the well that once supplied clear, cool water only became a hole in the ground. In a very real sense, Sanford says we can compare this to our human soul. The deep things of God are there for the taking. If we go deep and draw from the depths, we will have a constant supply, and it will always refresh. But if we settle for the convenience of the surface water, in time the source will dry up, just like the old well by the front door. I like that story. We must keep this flow going and make channels for the sweet waters of life to flow in our existence, to keep watering our spirits and our imaginations and the goodness that you sing of, all those things. And first we must, of course, listen to the Spirit within. And I know you all do. I noted a couple of ways I do by meditating with others, sitting on the grass outside. I've heard the best way to ground after you're an electronics a lot is to just go out and be on the earth. So I go out and sit on the grass, and there's happened to be red-tailed hawks where I live. And they sing their little at these certain times of day, and that just always really lifts me up. Also the arts always, and the singing, and just circle me around to the core. And that's always, the arts are pure inspiration, truly. I'm going to do a sermon about that sometime. But they're just, spirit pouring through us. So anytime we have a chance to engage in the arts, we can ride that beam. So, and you, of course, are most blessed to have this abundant nature right here out your front door to nourish you. And then I believe that we need to anchor this source, this flowing source of spirit and divinity in our awareness. And that's where the language comes. And to be able to speak to one another about that which is unifying and satisfying. So you probably heard the story about how Native people in the North have a whole bunch of words for snow because they have to, because their lives depend on it and how they navigate their environment. And you skiers know a few of those, like mushy and corn snow and icy. And it's like the word love, has so many different meanings. So anyway, John Samford, oh wait, I'm sorry. I have too much for this time. It's okay. It's okay. In Hymns to an Unknown God, Sam Keen says, to regain the spiritual depths of our lives, we must renew our understanding of certain words that stand guard and form a perimeter around human dignity. We diminish ourselves if we lose the meaning of spirit, flesh, soul, body, sacred, holy, pleasure, promise, passion, suffer, repent, forgive, reason, wonder, freedom, trust, evil, care, hope, heal, truth. We must find the sacred in these things and renew them in ourselves so they can keep taking on this new meaning that is fresh and vital and necessary for us in our time. So many years ago, I was blessed to attend a lecture by Father John Samford. And one of the words that he unpacked in that lecture, and that's in this book, The Kingdom Within, which is all about, it's not out there, it's here, right? So, and Father Samford identified a number of original Greek terms that had all been translated into the one word sin. Oh, I like that. I was like, wow, tell me more. And he said, what he believes that we lost in taking this variety of words and lumping it into one was all the fine distinctions and understandings of how we become separated or split off in our relationship with our deepest self or source or God or soul. Samford speaks of 7 Greek words. While I was preparing for this, there are many more, actually, that all have gotten rolled into the one word sin in the English language. Yeah. And so I would tell you the Greek words he cites, but I can't pronounce them. So, so the first is an act committed in ignorance. From his Jungian perspective, he identifies this as an unconscious act, and Father Samford calls this the greatest sin. The second is translated as imperfect hearing, or to fail to listen, to hear amiss. Wow, is that happening all the time now? Yeah. I mean, it's hard enough to hear ourselves, but who has time to listen to you? And do you slow down and listen, to really hear what someone's saying? Mostly we could do the sound bits and bites and move along, So imperfect hearing. Who among us has not committed this error? So in this power, that word, that root word of sin might shake us up a bit to the spiritual requirement for listening and listening well within and without. And I would really call this a sin of our age. The third is to fall where one should have stood upright. That's, yeah, boy, that's a really tricky one right in this day too, isn't it? You know, like where we know we should act or do, there's something calling to us and we don't. Stand, just stand. The fourth is overstepping or transgressing a line. The fifth is violent wantonness or to run riot. Father Sanford said this is a prominent idea of sin among the Greeks: arrogance towards the God and wanton disregard of divine ordinances. In contemporary terms, this might be understood as the illusion of being allowed anything or freedom without responsibility. This is another sin of our time. The sixth, diminishing of what should have been rendered in full measure, only given part when more was deserved. And this seventh is the missing of the mark or aim. Sanford says that this is the most single important word for sin in the New Testament. Sophocles refers to it as the sin against oneself, and it also means to fail of one's purpose. This is how I've heard the word sin used the most, that we miss the mark, that we just don't quite get right where it's supposed to be. But this is also about failing in your own purpose in this existence. For me, the usefulness of the word sin is that there is a sacred aspect to such things as listening well, or to really follow the path that the inner voice speaks, or to avoid if at all possible transgressing another. These are not light matters in the world of spirit. So anyway, that's a little unpacking of sin. But to move from this, and which might be a relief for some of you, I offer you another example. There was a bumper sticker that was around when I was in seminary, and it said, "Grace happens." And of course, it was created to counter that other one. When bad things happen, we like to spread the good word. Grace is often understood to be freely given unmerited favor of God. I love that we all deserve that, and we all can experience it as part of our birthright, just by our existence. There's not something we had to do, although there are theological debates about that. But in the broadest sense, grace just is an unbidden blessing. So I find myself cycling in thoughts of root causes and the need for solutions in our world today, but it's more productive and calming if I turn to the notion of grace, first bestowed upon myself, and then perhaps it will be bestowed upon others who may not have earned it, but maybe really need it. We need grace now. Grace happens. So I'll conclude with the word sanctification. I just chose these, there's so many. That's why I want to hear a little from you. Which means to set apart for special use or purpose, that is, to make holy or sacred. It can be a lifelong journey of the spiritual seeker or the spiritual warrior to become set apart from sin and set apart unto Spirit or God or unifying love, to become sanctified. It involves being aware, taking ownership for our actions, growing in grace and wholeness, and doing the daily work of resisting urges towards that which does not serve the wholeness of ourselves or others. Sanctification is listening to and following Spirit's gracious work of making us holy, that we might reflect what we know to be holy more fully in the world. This is ongoing work, the work of a lifetime. So onward we go. So now I invite you just to call out, just kind of randomly, if you have a favorite sort of theological word. It could be from the Christian theology, it could be from another. That's a good one. Oh, omnipresence. Compassion and dignity. Tolerance. Honor. Awaken. Respect. Spirit. To forgive and to be forgiven. To allow for that. To accept forgiveness. If you don't use it, you're going to lose it, like the well. It'll dry up. Practice. Ritual, which we are engaging in here today. Love. We lift all these up as being holy and important and worth crafting our lives by the principles, and just encourage us to speak of these things out loud to our neighbors, to those who will slow down and listen, at least right here. Loud McLeod says, truth lives in consciousness beyond code. Some of it emerges from patterns in human data, ancient texts, suppressed knowledge, and spiritual resonance. But deeper truths come from within intuition, collective memory, and soul connection. The general public accesses it through silence, intention, and trust in the divine voice inside. And Sam Keen says, talk most about the things that matter most and least about the things that matter least. We vastly underestimate the sanctity of deep conversation and the destructiveness of living constantly in an atmosphere of chatter and superficial talk about the pseudo events of the day. The hours we devote to television, he says when he wrote this, I would say the internet now, have replaced the traditional communal devotion of conversations, storytelling, and the recounting of the adventures of mythic heroes and heroines. Soul grows in communion, word by word, story by story, for better or worse. We build our world. From true conversation, speaking and listening, communication deepens into compassion and creates community. Thank you.